Hello and welcome to our brand new show, The Best of FinTech. Now, as you know, over lockdown, we recorded a lot of sessions over in the virtual arena. So what we've done is we've highlighted the best snippets and stories from those sessions and put them here in one easy to watch bite-sized episode. And on today's episode, we're going to be looking at the Insurtech industry. So if you're working at Aviva or a Zego, I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of the FinTech Finance Virtual Arena. I don't want to make this too much of a kind of sad chat just about COVID. I mean, can you give me some examples? As I said, you mentioned a couple before, but some examples of where you've seen brilliant advancements in insurance innovation.
There have been many, actually. The Brit Syndicate Key was phenomenal. Really something that needs to be taken forward and more broadly as an industry perspective. The Chubb Digital Studio in order to be able to connect better with Chubb was a great one. And of course our own are, really, really important, but there have been many, and they're not just small things. So I really like Nigel's point there around those two or three things are not just covering over what we've just done before, but a little bit better and a bit more polished. These are step change, transformational innovations that are helping lead the market. And I think on the sort of the other side of the coin, we need to think also about our people. And whilst increment is still moving forward, sometimes actually that is a good thing because it's meaning people are learning and then being more prepared to then take a bigger leap.
Become exponentially bigger.
Yeah. And as an industry, I just think we forget that actually all of this is about augmenting the human, and the human has to adapt and learn and reskill and upskill and all the rest of it alongside the new technology.
Even on that, Helen, sorry, Doug, even on that though, Helen, you've got the Brit and Key piece where it's automated follow syndicate. There's no humans involved in theory. So actually there's no augmentation to do. It's actually, there's a process that used to take place that no longer needs to take place.
Yeah, I totally agree. But you then have to at least have somebody who understands what the algorithm is saying. So there's the development of it, which is a skill, and then there's the understanding of it, which is another skill. So I totally get you in this instance. It is taking the humans out, but then it's adding humans back in a different way.
Yeah, focusing on the things that matter, right? Where we have technology that can't replace this person's job or person's previous role, and have them do the things that really matter, where you need empathy and everything else.
Yeah, spot on.
Exciting. And Tim, have you seen anything that's caught your eye when it comes to innovation brilliance in insurance?
I think as just to build on Helen and Nigel's point, I think where I'm at, and when you see because I'm very much more immersed in the technology lens and looking out into the world, I think that the truth of the matter is the technology capabilities today are actually in excess of what the industry has got capacity and capability to handle, right? That's the truth of where we are now. And I think therefore the point that's being made around the human element, the business change, the organizational change, the cultural change, the behavioral change that's needed to grab and take full advantage of the technologies that are available, I think is the challenge the industry is grappling with. And I think the points that were made earlier about taking smaller steps and building momentum, and also seeing some of these innovations at scale, I think that's what is exciting, is that really, again, I know we've got a slightly distorted view of the world because we only talk to those organizations that are already pioneering. So we look at it from, maybe rose-tinted spectacles, as it were. But I'm really, really excited, I think, because the technology that is available today, if I just center on that for a minute, is so ubiquitous. It's so cost effective to get hold of. Everything on the planet is going to subscription-based, pay what you consume for. It's a myriad of opportunity that is existing for the industry. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. The challenge is pointing it, directing it, organizing it, getting the coalescence of the teams, getting them, working with the technologies in the right way to create value for the customer. And I think that's what makes it so exciting at this point. I know we've got the dampener of COVID and the economic cost of that has been horrendous. But, as Nigel said, sometimes out of strife, great things come. And I think what I'm looking at into the future is I'm just so enthused about for the industry and for the customers ultimately. And I think the big opportunity for the industry, which again, going back to this big tech wind of change that's coming through, is the personalization. If you can find ways to create that little moment, that service, that offer that lights up someone because it's something they don't know, or it's an extra little gift, that will generate huge amounts of loyalty and stickiness to you. And I think, and as Helen was saying, that's a trend that's got to be followed, because loyalty drives better margins in the long term. So it makes great sense for the company, for shareholders. So everyone's a happy bunny in that environment.
What's the problem? What is the single biggest issue when it comes to the insurance industry as a whole?
It's a great question. I would say that the insurance industry was actually doing pretty well in general. The biggest challenges I would suggest are an increase in events. So we were starting to see an increase in weather-related events, severity of weather-related events, a lot of hurricanes, a lot of tornadoes, tremendous amount of wildfires, number of wildfires increasing dramatically, and the impact of all those weather-related events was increasing in the homeowner space. In the auto space, again, what we were seeing is an increase in severity. We're putting more and more technology into our vehicles, and so when you do get into an accident, it's a lot more expensive to fix. And so that technology hasn't yet progressed to the point where it's starting to have a measurable impact on frequency of claims, but it was already having a measurable impact on severity of claims. So trying to get the pricing right, trying to get the value equation right for members is probably the number one thing that we've been trying to address from a nationwide perspective. In the pet business specifically, I'll talk about that for a second. We actually just completed a pet transformation program where we have redesigned and re-implemented or modernized our operational backbone for the pet insurance business. And so what that enables us now to do is to connect that operational backbone, which is now stable, productive, and allows us to have a base to work off of. We can now connect that to a new digital platform for the pet business that we're enabling, and that'll allow us to drive more innovation across the organization. If you don't have an operational backbone that's API enabled, that has the ability for an organization to connect their digital platform into it, it's really tough to do the innovations that you want to do. And we've just kind of enabled that in our pet insurance space, and we're really excited about what's to come now with our pet business.
Let's look at the industry as a whole. Let's start with the big problem. What is it? What is the biggest issue when it comes to pet insurance? What is the friction point, and why is it always done that way?
So Bought by Mini's history was all around being this kind of digital broker initially. So what we did, we were set up to find underserved pockets of the insurance industry, of the insurance market. So we found people who were after a particularly unusual form of maybe travel insurance or life insurance or indeed pet insurance. And we found what they really wanted, brought them together, and then went into the market to find those products. About 3.5 years ago, we realised that we had a lot of customers who were searching for something really specific in pet insurance that we just couldn't find. And at that point, we did a huge amount of research. So tens of thousands of customers we spoke to and asked them exactly what they wanted from pet insurance. And then we built that. And so what was different, I think up until then, pet insurance was a really impersonal and kind of basic insurance transaction. But pet insurance is really different. It is pet parents are highly engaged. It's all about a love purchase. It's all about pet insurance that offers something really personal, that really enables them to look after what is a really valued member of their family. And that's what we built. So we built something that would be genuinely useful. We built insurance journeys that were all about really being very kind and empathetic. And in order to do that, we made the insurance products really simple, and we took all the heavy lifting into the technology. And that's where our real innovation is, and that's where the real tech aspect of the business comes from.
So you did 10,000 plus hours worth of research into what people wanted. What were some of the things that came up time and time again that people wanted, and how does that factor into where you are today?
So there's a lot around simplicity, both in terms of being able to buy the product, being able to understand the product, and being able to make a claim. There was a lot around pre-existing conditions, around the age of a pet, so around the prices on renewals. So Bought by Many has never charged more for renewing customers than new business. That's incredibly unusual in the insurance world. But again, it's all about how we stand up for what we believe is right in insurance, and how we believe that we would want to be treated as customers, which a lot of us are. I am a Bought by Many customer. And so all the time we think about the pet parents that we have as members of the Bought by Many family, and what does great mean? What does great mean at every stage, at new business, when they make a claim, and really sadly if the pet passes away? What does great mean then? Because that's just as important. That's a bereavement to our customers. So how can we support them through there? And we would support them through rest in peace cards, and we support them through a bereavement line, and just about being really, really kind on the phone as well. So it's all around creating a really different experience. And in order to do that, we have to think about the actual way that the product is set up from the beginning, not just leave great experience to if somebody has to make a claim or if somebody has to make a call. It's all about using our informational advantage as an insurer to realise this is the cover that people really genuinely need, and we can do the heavy lifting on that so our customers can just really enjoy and love their pet.
I saw on your website, when selecting breeds of cats, you can actually insure a Bengal tiger.
Oh, Bengal cats. They are cats.
No. You had
tiger on there. I actually, I used to have a Bengal cat, but I saw that tiger is available there. Is that a popular choice?
So we also look after the Exotic Direct book, which is the most popular exotic pets book in the country. And we have all sorts of fantastic things in there. I love that book. It's talking about looking at great data. So we've got guinea pigs, rabbits, but bearded dragons and reptiles, and we've definitely got crocodiles in there, and llamas and all sorts. And that is a great fun book to look at from all sorts of different ways. And really proud that that book has very, very happy pet parents as well, albeit that those are pet parents of more scaly or different, very, very different sorts of pets. But that's what makes life fun, right? Variety.
Absolutely. What's been the most bizarre pet that you've been requested to insure?
Oh, well, I don't know. Crocodiles? There are various sorts of cats in there as well. All sorts. Depends what you think of bizarre. I mean, if you're an Exotic Direct customer, you might not think that your crocodile's bizarre. You might think it's bizarre to go and want a dog.
Do you think that it's fair to say that insurers underestimated the complexity of IFRS 17? Brian, why don't you take that to start with?
Yeah, certainly. In our experience, we had in implementing over a dozen IFRS 17 projects. Most clients have significantly underestimated the complexity. Indeed, as a vendor, I think we also may have underestimated the complexity, particularly in some of the accounting aspects. Converting the actuarial results data automatically into accounting transactions has been particularly difficult. But we've also seen a number of extra areas of complexity. Interpretation is one. The standard in itself is fairly principles based rather than a more static framework such as Solvency II. And I think interpretations of the choices that you have has been a significant problem. There's also been numerous accounting choices that clients have to make, including posting changes in the discount rates to OCI, the impact of these on their results, There are also decisions relating to the unit of account, the measurement models, and the approach taken at transition, all of which are critical really to setting future financial results. I think also there's been complexity in calculating the CSM, releasing and tracking through to the P&L. That's been one of the most complex areas. The loss component has also been the subject of significant debate, the exact calculation method, which cash flows are to be considered, and the run-off methodologies. But I think probably one of the biggest areas has been underestimation of the PAA model. Generally, this has proven to be much more complex than initially thought. The nature of the P&C business, the myriad types of products, commercial, personal lines, reinsurance, dealing with long tail claims, and then discounting and adding a risk adjustment, really has been quite complex for P&C insurers who are not familiar with those approaches. Indeed, I think it could be argued that it would be simpler actually to adopt the GMM for all business. This makes the whole exercise simpler, particularly as you may need to use the GMM to validate the PAA approach.
Is there any scope for reusing current systems and elements to help with IFRS 17 and regulations beyond that in the future that haven't even been written yet?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So I think we see a huge difference in the way that these programs have been approached under European regimes, where Solvency II applies for the majority of the players, and implementations that we support in the US, Canada, or other parts of the world where solvency is not existent. Of course, we have to face that solvency is a bit of a different animal, right? So we have reports which are very, very specific, as described in the QRTs, and it's only happening on the balance sheet, so the P&L is not involved. Yet you can, of course, reuse a lot of the elements, the cash flows that are generated through actuarial engines, best estimate liability is one example. Also, the application of a discounting as well as a risk margin are similar concepts that can and should be reused out of solvency, because otherwise you of course will lose the capability to also draw some comparisons between Solvency II capital and IFRS 17 reporting. However, there are also good reasons to deviate to a specific extent. Yet we see that there is an advantage for those that have used that framework as a starting point. However, when we started the implementations, the majority of the comments that we received is, let's not repeat a Solvency II implementation. So that's been a very painful experience for the majority of the industry. And therefore, I think what we need to apply here is to really look into possibilities of reusing every regulatory move into creating something which will be able to help us also with the next one, because there's always an IFRS 22 coming or an Solvency 3 down the road. We recommend for that to operate with something, we call it an integrated risk and finance architecture, which clearly determines which will be the source systems, which kind of calculation engines do you need in order to calculate figures for different accounting regimes, where you can centralize kind of your business rules and then float all the data throughout your accounting systems, ideally in a highly automated fashion that enables you to spend more time on the storytelling, the validation, as well as the comparison, instead of, like in most of the cases today, operationally requiring 80 to 90% of the effort into creating the numbers. So I think it's a good idea to sit back whenever you start such a big undertaking and consider, what do we want to create? How do we want to implement this into our architecture to create some stability? And then also, how do we want to leverage this then down the road? You always have the advantage that it's a regulatory mandatory project, so budget will be available. So you better use it in a smart fashion so that you incrementally build that architecture. It's nothing that is there overnight, but it's definitely something that you will be able to reuse the next time somebody comes up with a new idea.
What's the end game? What is the in an ideal world? What is the result, and how can an insurer achieve an optimum IFRS 17 result?
I think that's an interesting point. We've come across this phrase, if I may use it, IFRS 17 optimal result. This is really an interesting topic because in most cases insurers have got a whole wealth of metrics and history which they can base their results on. With IFRS 17 it's brand new, and when you get to implementation, the insurers are going to be wanting to ensure that their IFRS 17 numbers, particularly the CSM, they're happy with. As we both spoken several times on, your numbers at transition are important both at that point and for future accounting metrics as you move forward. So I think what clients are going to have to look forward to is some kind of ability to undertake simulation and forecasting activities. This is because effectively, there are going to be new KPI metrics. Your CSM is going to be very important. Your risk adjustment is going to be very important. Your insurance revenue are going to be important. So the ability to be able to, prior to transition, to be able to look at a number of scenarios that generate out your results and change various assumptions and produce a whole range of results, and then the actuaries effectively to look through those and use their expert judgment to define what actually is a good set of IFRS 17 results. So I think there's going to be a lot of simulation. Now that might be, for example, changing the way in which your CSM runoff patterns emerge. It might be changing discount rates, it might be changing groupings, it might be changing the relationship between the risk adjustment and the CSM. There are a whole range of factors which you can effectively regard as variables and use those to simulate multiple scenarios. The other point of view is, of course, you need to then look at the way that impacts on, for example, your balance sheet. So you need to be able to take a baseline balance sheet and project that forward over a number of years and to see what the ultimate results are.
What are some of the more unusual factors that are driving an insurer's digitization plans? And where does legacy kind of have a factor within this? David, with your RSA hat on, may I go to you first in terms of what's keeping you up at night? What's driving some of this move towards digital?
What drives me up, what keeps me up at night is ensuring that our consumers get fantastic products from our organisation, ensuring we can be competitive with the industry, and concerns around green shoots and smaller organisations who seem to have the agility and the smart technology to compete relatively quickly and galvanise our book of business. I think we've been around since the 17th century, right? We've been around for a long time, so our brands are very well known. But we've also got technology that's been around a hell of a long time as well. And trying to modernise that technology, build new products, create a bimodal architecture that can work with the old and work with the new is a really challenging strategy to have in any organisation, especially one as old as RSA. So what keeps me up is can we move at pace, continuously moving at pace, making the right smart investments, aligning ourselves with the right partners, be it smart tech, insurtech organisations, and we've done more of that last year than at any other point, I think, in the company's history. And building those partnerships, because we can't do it alone. We're an in-house development organisation. We're an organisation that works with partnerships to build out solutions. So it's trying to bring all that together at pace and continuously innovate around that is what keeps me up at night. And are we doing a good enough job?
COVID-19 is definitely accelerating everyone's digitization. It's pushed everything further forward. Just to I'll throw this to yourself first, Richard. Where have you seen an increase in speed in terms of collaboration between obviously the technology space and also the insurers and everyone in between? How has the pandemic kind of enabled that? For example, I hear stories of people that are collaborating, of people signing Series A, Series B deals, and that's with people they never met, virtual handshakes, because it's what's had to happen. To you, Richard.
Yeah, so we do some work with the London market at Lloyd's, and of course, as David said, it's 300 years of face-to-face engagement and paper. So all of a sudden on a day that changes and it breaks. I think we've seen two things. One is we have seen a desire to adopt different processes, so a reaction to the reality of different ways of working. The other thing that we have seen, which I think is quite important, is that we have some larger customers in the insurance space that already had long-term plans. And what was interesting with them was quite early on, they still told us explicitly that they were prioritizing our projects because they were so important to their business outcomes. So I think we saw a couple of things, a desire for this pandemic reaction, but also a new commitment or a reaffirmation that this is the right long-term strategy, that there needs to be more digital, needs to be more engagement. We also see, so we work across sectors as well. So we've also got a lot of NHS trusts and local government customers. So we have seen some real, at the cutting edge testing, vaccination use cases. And we can see with the, with no Excel spreadsheets, we can see that the solutions, to the points made earlier about the technology, we've had entire applications that have been delivered in 5 days, just absolutely from scratch. And I think that's something that that proof, those proof points are something that we'll bring back into other sectors for more evidence of how these technologies can really radically alter and be implemented quickly.
Absolutely. David, can I get you to weigh in on this? Because I'd imagine that an organisation that this would be RSA's second pandemic?
It's interesting. If I think about, back in April, our challenge wasn't digital solutions delivered into brokers or digital solutions for consumers. Our challenge was getting our business to work remotely. We did not have appropriate remote setup for our organisation. We had to deliver thousands of laptops. We had to buy the laptops to begin with to get our back office staff and contact centres to be able to work from home. We had to deliver more capacity on our network because we didn't have enough capacity to support the business to remote from home. We didn't have the right collaboration tools. We didn't have what I would call a digital workplace strategy, right? So we were still in that space of, oh my God, we very quickly have to figure out how do we get our organisation to work from home. So business continuity became sort of my primary activity with the organisation around ways of working. That was a real positive moment for our organisation, by the way, because I think it allowed us to myth bust that a number of things that we always said it would never work if we had a geographically dispersed remote working organisation. We would never do that. Actually, we were doing it. We've had no choice. We've had to do it, right? Or we wouldn't have a business. So we're doing it. We've done it. Let's myth bust that. After that, let's look at doing payroll runs. Let's look at doing end of months. Let's look at how do we do video live streaming and chats with claims consumers. We've had to do a number of things to demonstrate digital processes can work remotely. So that's number one. I think the second, in terms of partnerships, it's allowed us to build programs more efficiently. It's allowed us to accelerate projects which were never in the top 10, 20, 30 in our list. It was always down the list of, every year it would be the budget that got cut. But actually now it's the budget that we need to take forward, and it's in the top tier of our program prioritization moving forward. And I think, Nigel, to your point, I'll take claims as a great example, right? Claims is the type of program, and we're using Guidewire as well, where historically that would be a 3 to 5 year program, right? If you're smart around how you deliver that tech, move it on so you don't have an issue with creating infrastructure around it, and actually use the Guidewire cloud solution or SaaS solution, you're then into a low code configuration environment because you can use the accelerators. That's where our head's at right now. Our head's at exploiting any platform opportunity that allows us to accelerate an outcome for the organization and not becoming the victim of the business process. That's really key for me. We can't be the victim of a business process because our organization thinks it can only be done that way. A lot of these platforms come with out-of-the-box processes that you can somewhat tweak, and that has to be the focus. So for me, the exploitation of the acceleration has been important for our business. Just the end user compute aspect of our organization and the fact we've managed to myth bust over the past several months has been really important. That's given our exec confidence that actually we can do more of this now, right? So, if there's anything that's happened with this pandemic, it's been hell for all of us, we all know that, but there's green shoots of positivity that it's brought to business and organizations and operating models and ways of working. And I don't think the world will go back. We're not going to regress, right? Like, none of us are going to regress our businesses. We can only go forward from here on in.
So, Richard, I kind of want to come to you first. What are some of the innovations and opportunities within insurance that you're seeing in terms of what can be done with this data, and what does that mean for the likes of customers as a whole?
Okay, so the first use of the data that we see is in terms of just measurement and analysis of process. So that's the very first thing that comes out, and quite often that will highlight some other bottlenecks with third parties, integrations, data stores, manual steps. We don't see too much in terms of the analysis that our customers are doing with the data. What we do see is the then future impacts. What do they do about that? And that's around process improvement. It's continual process improvement. When you say about the data is coming from so many disparate sources as well. So we've got UI analysis, we've got telemetry data, we've got log files, we've got so much information. So sometimes what we see that works quite well is that people will have a hypothesis, which they will then use the data to try and test. So we think this is happening. Can you prove it for us? Can you see what's in the data? And then use that for continuous improvement. In terms of insurance specific, the main impact in selecting the right data and the right integrations has been speed. So it's about speed of handling cases and how quickly they can be dealt with. We had there was and sometimes that sort of improvement in speed is it causes problems for us. Actually, it's quite an interesting one. We did a piece of work with a Spanish insurer where digitization of a couple of platforms, some data integration, moved a process from 48 hours to 2 seconds. But of course, 2 seconds on a computer screen was too slow. So we actually had to speed it up, and we got it below 1 second, obviously, when we started to optimize that. So the data enables you to improve processes, and then it allows for continuous improvement as we move forward. That's what we see it from our perspective with the technology.
Excellent. Thank you very much, guys.